It was a lovely day, one of those clear mornings that foretells the ideal party. At dawn, I had my shoes polished. It was a huge day, and Karen insisted on matching her sister Lisa's wedding theme, so she put a tiny boot to my nicest suit for her family. Although Lisa and I weren't very close, I was there to help Karen. When I arrived at the expansive estate, the grand venue was bustling with people dressed to impress. I felt proud to stand next to Karen, but my excitement was tempered by a nagging uneasiness. Even though her family frequently treated me like an outsider, I reminded myself that today was about honoring love. I confidently walked up to the door, nodding to the security officer as I handed him my invitation. He took a quick look, then turned to face me. "Your name isn't on the list," he said. I blinked flatly. "That can't be right. My name is Thomas Reed, and I'm Karen's husband." The guard's face remained the same. "I apologize, sir, but I am unable to allow you in." At first, I assumed it was an error. Perhaps Karen had unintentionally made a clerical mistake, forgetting to confirm my presence. But then, I saw her standing, a few feet away with her mother Vivian, laughing instead of hurrying to clarify the misunderstanding. The sight of Karen, the person I had vowed to love and support, standing with a hand over her mouth, giggling, impacted me more than I had anticipated. Vivian didn't bother to conceal her amusement, barely holding back a chuckle. With a loud laugh, I threw back my head. This wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. As I looked around at the other guests, some of whom were milling about and watching the spectacle unfold, my throat constricted. Murmurs began to ripple through the gathering, and several phones were raised, capturing this embarrassing incident for future amusement. I wanted to yell, to demand an explanation, but I knew it would only serve to humiliate me further in Karen and Vivian's eyes. So I did the only thing I could. I straightened my shoulders, nodded to the security guard, and left. The journey home was a blur, my mind racing. Karen and I weren't perfect, but I kept asking myself, how did we get to this point? I believed we were partners, yet this felt calculated. Did she want to diminish me? To show me I was expendable in her world? I parked the car and sat silently, staring at the dashboard. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked strange, grim. I had been disregarded before, ignored at family gatherings, treated like an accessory at social occasions. But this was different. This was cold. This was public. Later that night, Karen returned home. She smelled faintly of champagne and roses, and she seemed unsurprised to see me sitting on the couch. "You didn't attend the ceremony?" she asked casually. I looked at her, searching for some sign of regret. All I saw was apathy. "You knew I wasn't on the list," I stated evenly. She shrugged. "Lisa requested an exclusive guest list. It was best to keep things simple." I didn't respond. That night, as she slept beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The laughter, the humiliation, the whispers. They replayed in my mind like a vicious loop. This wasn't just about a wedding. It was about respect, or rather, the lack of it. And as I lay there, I made myself a promise. I would never forget this moment. It wasn't just a rejection from an event, it was a rejection of me, tranquility. Everything for Karen and her family started to fall apart. It began during lunch when Jeff, one of my co-workers, knocked on my office door and peeked in. With a tentative look, he said, "Hey, Thomas, have you seen this?" Sliding his phone across the desk, I looked down and saw a story on a local gossip blog with the headline, "Wedding Fallout." As I read the article on the backstage of a social media catastrophe, I felt sick to my stomach, because it wasn't just about the wedding. It exposed Karen's family's shallowness in detail. Considering the facade they had established over the years, it seemed that a writer had taken notice of the wedding fiasco. And when the story looked more closely into their lifestyles, it revealed how Vivian and Lisa had exaggerated their social standing. Karen's affluence had been an illusion, one built on credit cards and loans to keep up appearances. A dissection of their social media posts revealed the sharp disparity between her carefully manicured existence and the truth. I ought to have felt vindicated, but I didn't. It was a meaningless triumph, watching their meticulously built world fall apart due to their deceptions. When I got home that evening, I saw Karen and Vivian in the living room. Vivian's typical assurance had vanished, replaced by something else. Karen's face was filled with tears, and she was holding her phone in a desperate manner. She gripped my hand tightly and murmured in a shaky voice, "We need to talk." I rose up. With her arms crossed, Vivian jumped in at the doorway, her voice frantic. "People are talking about Lisa's sponsorship arrangements falling through. This piece is ruining us, Thomas." I arched an eyebrow. "Canceling collaborations with Karen. The wedding fallout has become a PR nightmare." Karen came closer, her voice shaking. "Do you have anything to do with this?" she pleaded. "Please, you're good at damage control. You can help us fix this, Thomas." I couldn't stop laughing. "You humiliated me in front of your friends. You and your family have been treating me like an afterthought for years." Vivian interrupted loudly. "Your family and the entire internet. Now, you want my help?" "We didn't mean... It was all a misunderstanding," I scoffed. "Misunderstanding? You planned my public humiliation. That was intentional, Karen, not some mistake." Karen sobbed uncontrollably. "All right. I made a mistake. I didn't anticipate this outcome. I didn't think..." "That's the issue." "Karen," I interrupted, "you didn't think. You never considered how your behavior would impact me. And now, you want me to clean up your mess?" She started to reply, but stopped. There was nothing she could say to defend herself. Then, Vivian spoke. The consequences of their actions had gone beyond just their social circles. Creditors were now contacting them. Lenders were threatening lawsuits for non-payment of the loans they had used to finance Lisa's lavish wedding. Vivian begged, "Thomas, you have contacts. You could help." I shook my head. "No, you and your family created this problem, and you'll have to bear the repercussions of your actions." Karen stared at me. Desperation filled the room. Softly, she murmured, "I'll make this right. Please, just don't give up on us." I looked at her, searching for sincerity. But all I saw was someone struggling to save a life that had already collapsed. "I gave you everything, Karen. My support, my loyalty, and you threw it all away." I picked up my small bag and walked out of the house without making a commotion. I didn't slam the door. I simply drove away, leaving Karen and Vivian to clean up the mess they had caused. And as I made my way to a hotel, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. For the first time, I wasn't burdened by their demands. The wedding's aftermath had shown me Karen and her family's true nature. To them, saving face was more important than making amends. But I was no longer their escape. I thought I had seen the worst of it, the humiliation, the social media fallout. But I was wrong. Days later, I received an unexpected phone call. I scowled when the voice on the other end spoke tentatively. "This is Melissa, Lisa's former event planner. I resigned after the wedding fiasco, but I needed to get in touch with you. Because, well, you should know what actually transpired behind the scenes." I gripped my phone tighter. "Go on." Melissa went on to reveal a complex network of deceit, Lisa's extravagant wedding, the outrageous expenses. They had justified it as necessary to maintain their image. But what really caught my attention was how they had paid for it. Vivian, Karen. They had taken out a loan against our joint accounts without telling me. My stomach turned. Melissa's next revelation was worse. "I overheard Karen and Vivian laughing," she said in a timid voice. "They said you were too basic to understand how money worked. that you wouldn't even notice if they used your funds. Her words hit me like a freight train. That night, I returned to the house, not to make amends, but to demand answers. Karen was in the living room looking at her phone like nothing had happened. I was thankful Vivian wasn't around. "We need to talk." Karen looked up, startled by my tone. "What's wrong?" I flung the bank statements onto the table. Her face went pale. "Don't lie to me, Karen. Melissa already told me everything." "You used our money for your sister's wedding." "It wasn't like that," Karen stammered. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "We were going to pay it back." I couldn't believe it. "You gave up our future? For appearances? You—" "Don't get it, Thomas. My family has expectations. I had to—" Her words stung. "You've always been happy with your modest life," she continued, "but I couldn't live like that." And there it was. Karen never saw me as an equal. I was just a convenient tool, something to be discarded when I no longer served her needs. She took advantage of me, not just my money, but my trust. Karen sobbed. "I didn't mean for things to get this bad." I remained firm. "I don't care about your excuses. There is nothing left to save." She looked at me, desperate. "So you're just—" "No, Karen. You gave up on us the moment you made your choice." That night I packed the last of my belongings, and I left for good. A week later, Karen finally called. For a second, I considered ignoring it. But I answered. Her voice was soft, hesitant. "Thomas, can we talk?" I sighed. "What do you want, Karen?" I wanted to apologize. I let her speak. For the first time, her words sounded sincere. But it was too late. "I appreciate your apology, Karen. But some things can't be fixed with words." She was silent, and as I hung up, I felt something unexpected. Not sadness, not anger, but peace. For the first time in years, I was free.